Hi, listeners. It's Stephanie Ricca here with a quick note before we get started. Hotel News Now is changing its name to CoStar News, so our podcast name will change too in the coming weeks. Same smart reporting, same hosts, the great guests you've come to expect from us, just a new name that reflects our overall branding change from Hotel News Now to CoStar News. You don't have to do a thing, just keep listening and we'll take care of the rest. Thanks for sticking with us. Now let's get into today's episode.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brian Roten, Senior Reporter at CoStar News Hotels, and I'm joined today by Jessica Cook, partner at the law firm Fisher Phillips, and we're going to talk about what hoteliers should do if immigration and customs enforcement agents come knocking. Jessica, thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Before we get into this very important topic, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience in immigration and hospitality employment law?
Thank you, Brian. It's wonderful to be here with you today. As you mentioned, I'm a partner in the law firm of Fisher and Phillips. We are a labor and employment law firm, and so we work with employers and employment law issues. What my specialty is business immigration. And so I work with companies in the hospitality industry when it comes to immigration compliance, I-9 audits, ICE raids, Department of Justice investigations and immigration, as well as helping them to obtain visas that they need for their workforce, including H-2Bs, J-1s, H-1Bs, all of those things. And I've been working in this space for almost 20 years now.
So you sound like the perfect person to talk to about this. So let's get into it. We've all read the headlines about the federal government's focus on arresting and deporting illegal immigrants, about the ICE raids across the U.S., about protests against those raids and deportations. We've seen some back and forth, as well as whether there's going to be any kind of pause or temporary pass to farmers and hospitality employers. But as far as I've seen so far, nothing official has come out yet. We also know that ICE received a massive boost in funding through the recently passed tax bill. So, Jessica, what are employers in the hospitality supposed to do with all of this in mind? And that's a big question. So let's break it down for our listeners. We'll do that. Let's start at the top. At the corporate level, for bigger owner operators, third party managers, what needs to happen if at this point they don't have plans and policies in place, and if they do, how frequently do they need to review it and update it?
Well, I think what you said is right. They need to prepare. The government is laser focused when it comes to immigration compliance right now. And we're going to see the worksite enforcement continue. And although the president made mention of maybe putting a pause when it comes to doing raids and enforcement, when it comes to the hospitality industry, they then came back later and said, no, we're not going to do that. So it is critical that employers in this space are preparing. And the main thing that they need to do right now is to create a plan, a protocol for their business on what to do if ICE walks in the door in order to conduct a raid.
So what what should this plan look like? And I understand it's going to be very business specific, but are there some general things that they need to think about when they're putting this together?
Yeah, some of the general things that they need to think about when they want to put something like this together is going to be one, creating a team. Who are going to be your immigration point people? So that when ICE walks in the door, you want to make sure that you have designated people who are going to interface with them, who understand the company's rights and responsibilities during this time. People who are going to be trained and understand what a judicial warrant is versus an administrative warrant. So they know how to limit and protect the business and the employees during this time.
So since you mentioned it, what is the difference between those two types of warrants?
So if ICE comes to your business, you do want to ask them, do you have a warrant? And if they have a judicial warrant, that will be a warrant that is signed by a federal judge that is going to authorize them to go into your private and non public spaces. Without a judicial warrant, they can only be in your public spaces. And in a hotel, that would include places like the lobby, if you have restaurants that are within the hotel. And so you want to make sure everyone understands the difference. With an administrative warrant, that only allows them to come into your public space. So an administrative warrant is one that Department of Homeland Security can issue to themselves, and it may authorize them to come and arrest one person, but it's not going to give them access to your entire workforce and allow them to investigate and interrogate the entire workforce.
Okay. Very helpful to know. So let's say we have this company, they have their third party manager, they have a plan in place. Wonderful.
Mhm.
How do they communicate that then to all of their properties in their portfolio? How do they make sure that everyone knows, yes, this is what you're supposed to do? What is that communication? What is that training?
So, what we've been advising clients to do is to actually put their plan on paper. And so, we've been working with a lot of them to create a protocol that is 1 to 2 pages long. We want part of the protocol to include a script or instruction for whoever is the receptionist or the front desk worker, whoever may be the first person that's going to come into contact with ICE. Then we want their main job to be to communicate to the immigration point person that ICE is here. And then the immigration point person will come and they will be the ones who will be talking with ICE and ensuring that everything is done properly and reviewing a warrant. So what's critical is that you are putting something on paper that is clear and easy to understand, and then you want to have training with your people on it. And typically you can just have a Zoom call or something like that where you are going through the protocol with everyone so that they understand it. You also want to walk them through what an ICE raid might look like so that they're also clear on what they could expect. So you want to create the plan, and then you want to communicate it to your people by training them on it. And you don't just want to train whoever are going to be the immigration point people. You also want to make sure that higher level managers or leaders within the company or within the hotel who may be there on the ground that day also understand what the protocol is.
Gotcha. So for I'm assuming the average hotel employee, they're coming to work, they're just trying to do their job. All of a sudden, law enforcement agents come to the property and they start, they're asking questions or they're trying to begin their investigation. For anyone who is, tasked with, you know, greeting them or talking to them in any capacity here, that I'm sure can be very intimidating for the hotel employee, regardless of whatever their status or experience may be. What is something that hotel employers can do to help their GMs and their other employees feel more confident when dealing with, law enforcement agents if they come to their property to conduct, an investigation or a raid?
I think it's important for them to understand their rights. From an employee perspective, if ICE comes in with a judicial warrant and that authorizes them and allows them to talk to the employees, but the employees still have the right to remain silent. The employees still have the right to not answer ICE's questions and to ask to speak to an attorney. They have the right to refuse to hand over their IDs or their paperwork to ICE. You know, Executing those rights may mean that they're detained, but it is important for people to understand that they do have those rights. From an employer standpoint, it's okay if you want to make sure that your employees understand their rights, but you don't want anything that you do to make it seem as though you are trying to interfere with ICE's ability to do what they're there to do in
Hmm.
executing the judicial warrant. So you want to be careful and mindful of that in any statements that you're making to your employees.
I was gonna say, yeah, I'm sure these situations would be tense enough as it is. You don't want to potentially add to any kind of extra problems then.
You don't. You really don't, because you do want to make it clear to ICE that the company is here to cooperate and that we're not trying to do anything to prevent them from doing that. That said, you do want to make sure that as the employer, you're not doing anything to, help employees escape or do anything like that while once ICE is on the property. Once they're there, ICE is in charge, and you need to allow them to, execute the judicial warrant as necessary.
So we started this talking about, what are they supposed to do if they're a bigger owner operator, they're a third party management company, they have a sizable portfolio, they have a corporate office that can provide these resources. But what about when we look at the smaller operations? There are a lot of family, owned businesses, franchises out there where maybe they just have the one property, or they have a couple, all within the same city or region. They don't necessarily have that big corporate backing to help them out. What should these smaller owner operators do here?
I think that they need to follow the same type of procedure. There are a lot of resources on the internet that can help, a lot of articles, even with my firm, that can outline what you need to do and if ICE were to walk in the door. And so you can use those resources, and you can also seek legal advice on creating this simple protocol. This isn't something that is necessarily going to, cost a lot of money in order for you to put this type of procedure in place and to get your people trained on it. And it's well worth the investment. So a lot of resources, and we would encourage even smaller operators to try to put some sort of simple process in place as well.
Gotcha. So one thing you had mentioned before, something that you specialize in, is the I-9 audits. And can you tell us the difference between an I-9 audit and any kind of, you know, ICE agents coming in for any kind of enforcement? Are there any similarities? Is there anything what are going to be some key things that can tell you, oh no, these are different things?
Yeah, that's a really great question, because just because ICE comes on your property does not mean that they're there for an ICE raid.
Hmm.
Or if another, someone else, from Department of Homeland Security comes on property. So you do want to make sure that you're clear for why they're there. Another reason that ICE could come onto your property besides executing a judicial warrant or an administrative warrant could be to do what's called a notice of inspection. A notice of inspection is an I-9 audit. With an I-9 audit, the government is going to come and they're going to drop the notice off to you. That notice gives you 3 days to turn over your I-9s and the other requested documentation to them. You don't want to waive your 3 days in order to give them those documents. And so with the notice of inspection, that does not give them access to your private spaces. It only allows them to come into your public space, i.e., your receptionist office, and to give you that document. So with the notice of inspection, they're not going to be allowed to talk to your employees. They're not going to be allowed to seize documents or to do those types of things. So it is very important to know the difference, because we are seeing ICE come onto properties without proper documentation and trying to see if an employer will authorize them and consent to a search, or consent for them to come and walk around their property and talk to their employees and just hang out and see what they can find out. So you don't want to ever, you don't want to ever do that.
I mean, I think that's just generally good advice for for everybody.
Definitely.
So, what are some potential blind spots for employers in the hotel space? Top of mind for me is, contract labor. You need to fill in a couple of spots, so you hire, you bring in some contract labor to fill in some housekeeping spots or things like that. So, we can look at other blind spots too, but in that particular situation, what do you need to do if you're contracting out some labor for your hotels?
Yeah, if you're contracting out labor, you do want to make sure that with whatever agreement you have with that contracting company has language in it where that contracting company is confirming that they are in compliance with immigration laws. You want to make sure that contracting company is properly doing I-9s for the people they're sending to your business and that these people are authorized to work in the US. So you want to make sure that whatever agreement you have has some of that language in it. And then you also want to make sure that if you ever obtain any information that makes you question whether some of the laborers who are on your property are authorized to work, you do want to make sure that you're addressing that and you're seeking legal counsel and you're not just putting your, head in the sand and saying, I don't need to worry about that. If ICE comes in to execute a judicial warrant and conduct a raid, you do want to make sure that you let them know that all of the people on property are not your employees, that you do have some contract laborers that are there, and you're going to try to prevent ICE from talking to those people because they are not your employees.
What do you consider to be some other potential blind spots in the hotel employment area? I think we talked initially just setting this up. You talked about, what about ICE agents who stay in your hotel and they
Mm,
just
mhm,
start chatting up hotel employees just while they're there.
mhm. I think that we have heard that ICE has, while they were staying at some hotels, that they were actually trying to talk to some of the employees that were there and trying to gather information about them. And so I think that that is something that that it's good for individuals in the hotel industry to know because as ICE has been traveling around and executing these raids, they are staying in properties and they may be trying to gather information while they're there. I think other potential blind spots would be when it comes to some of the work authorization programs that the
Yes.
government is ending early in the hotel industry, you're employing a lot of people who are on work authorization cards, whether they have temporary protected status, also known as TPS, whether they were part of the CHNV parole program that was ended. You are employing a lot of people who have temporary work authorization, and the government is ending some of these programs, and they're ending some of them early. So you could have people on your payroll who have a work authorization card that is still valid, but the government has revoked. And so that is a huge issue that you want to make sure that you're reviewing, seeking legal counsel on, and that you are handling it properly because that is a new development and it's something that continues to develop daily.
How do you find out if one of your employees who's here on a work authorization program, how do you find out if the status has changed?
So what we're recommending is that you go through your I-9s and you find out who is working on an EAD. And if you're keeping copies of those EAD cards, then you can look at the category code on the card, which will tell you the basis that they obtained the card. And then from there, you're going to need to stay up to date on some of these legal changes that are happening. So, definitely recommend that you are getting legal alerts from some law firms so that you can get the information when these things are changing. We're also seeing recently that E-Verify is making some updates as well to the system. and they're encouraging employers to go in and run reports to see if anyone's work authorization has changed. So there's a couple of different ways that you can go about doing it, but this is also an area where you want to make sure that you have a practice in place that is up to date on this new changing issue.
And because their status is being changed with the government, that means that the federal government is aware of who they are and where they're working. So it's not exactly hidden from them.
It is not exactly hidden from them, and it could make it very easy for the government to decide that they want to go in and do an I-9 notice of inspection. They may want to do a raid. They may want to, we even on the state level, there are some states that also do e-verify audits. And so even on the state level, they could be auditing I-9s and E-Verify to confirm that you've been handling this properly. So we think this would be a great way for the government to check up on immigration compliance because, like you said, they know where these people are working.
Jessica, I think that pretty well covers everything that I had for you today. But any closing thoughts that you would like to add?
I think that preparation is going to be key. Every employer is not going to receive an ICE raid, but we are continuing to see I-9 notices of inspections increasing. And so this is the time where you want to make sure that you're conducting some I-9 audits. We recommend that you have your I-9 self audits done by legal counsel so that you can ensure your compliance. And so that is an important piece right now to make sure that your immigration compliance is proper. And so we want to do the I-9 audits, and you also want to review your immigration policies and your training for your staff as well.
Jessica, thank you so much for taking the time to go over all of this with us. I think this is something that's going to be of a lot of interest to our listeners. So again, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Hi, I'm STR's Isaac Colazo.
And I'm co-stars Jan Freitag. And together we are the data geeks behind Tell Me More, a hospitality data podcast work.
Every month, we bring you a fresh take on the latest hotel data, insights into the travel trends behind that performance, and the big picture topics you should be thinking about.
And we also don't mind getting into some good-natured disagreement from time to time. Hey, when Isaac and I start talking data together, anything can happen, and it usually does.
Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you like to listen.
Thanks for listening. This episode was recorded July 8th, 2025, and produced and edited by Brian Roten.